When you're 30 years old, life feels like it's just beginning. You believe there's still plenty of time. Time to build success, time to fix mistakes, time to visit your parents, time to say the things you keep postponing. But if you sit long enough with people who have lived 80, 90, sometimes even 100 years, you start to hear something very different. A quiet pattern, not of achievements, but of realizations that came too late. I once spent an afternoon speaking with several elderly people at a small retirement community. Some were in their late 70s, others were well into their 90s. And I asked them one simple question. What do you wish you knew when you were 30? At first, many of them smiled, not because the question was funny, but because the answer felt painfully obvious now. One woman leaned forward slowly and said something that stayed with me. She said, "If I knew at 30 what I know now, I would have lived a completely different life." When we are 30, most of us are chasing something, a promotion, recognition, a bigger salary, a better house. And for many people, success feels like the most important thing in the world. I remember an elderly man named Richard telling me about his friend Thomas. Thomas was brilliant. He built a successful company in his 30s, worked late nights, missed holidays, missed birthdays, missed family dinners. Everyone admired him. But when Thomas retired in his 70s, something unexpected happened. His children rarely visited, not because they hated him, but because they had simply grown used to living without him. Richard told me something quietly that day. Thomas spent 40 years building a life and then realized he had built it mostly alone. And suddenly, the definition of success began to change. A nurse who had worked for decades in palliative care once said something very powerful. She said, "When people are near the end of life, they almost never talk about money. They talk about people. A brother they lost contact with, a friend they should have forgiven, a spouse they wish they had appreciated more." One elderly woman told me about her husband. They had been married for over 50 years. When they were younger, life was busy. Work, raising children, paying bills. But after he passed away, the house became incredibly quiet. She said something that many older people repeat in different ways. "I wish I had slowed down and noticed how precious ordinary days were. Not the vacations, not the celebrations, but the simple evenings, the dinner table conversations, the laughter that seemed so normal at the time, because those moments disappear quietly. And when they're gone, you realize they were the real treasure." Something else happens as people get older. They slowly stop caring about other people's opinions. Not in a selfish way, but in a freeing way. One 88-year-old man told me something that made everyone in the room laugh. He said, "When I was 30, I worried about what everyone thought of me. When I was 50, I stopped caring so much. And now that I'm almost 90, I realize nobody was thinking about me that much in the first place." We spend so much energy trying to impress people, trying to look successful, trying to prove something, but many older people eventually realize something simple. Most people are too busy worrying about their own lives to judge yours, and that realization can set you free. There was another man I spoke with named Harold. Harold had been a construction worker his entire life, strong, hard-working, always the toughest man in the room, but in his 70s, his health began to decline quickly. One day he told me something very honest. When you're young, you think your body will always forgive you. The long nights, the bad food, the stress. But your body keeps a quiet record of everything, and eventually it asks you to pay the bill. Harold paused for a moment before adding something important. I wish someone had told me at 30 that taking care of your health is one of the greatest investments you can make. Perhaps the most common thing older people say is this: life feels slow when you're living it, but when you look back, it feels incredibly fast. One man told me something that I still think about often. He said, one moment you're holding your newborn child, and the next moment you're watching them move out of the house. Years pass quietly, not with dramatic changes, but through ordinary days, school runs, family dinners, work mornings, weekend errands, and then suddenly, decades have passed. That's why so many elderly people say the same thing. Don't wait too long to start living. Not someday, not when everything is perfect, but now. When you're young, you sacrifice time for success. But when you're old, you would give all the success just to get the time back. When I finished that conversation with those elderly men and women, I realized something very simple. None of them wished they had worked more hours. None of them wished they had earned slightly more money. Most of their wishes were about time with family, time spent appreciating small moments, time used more wisely, and perhaps the greatest lesson they shared was this: life isn't just something you prepare for. It's something you are already living right now. So maybe the real question isn't just what old people wish they knew at 30. Maybe the question is this: what will you wish you had done differently when you are 90? Before you go, let me ask you something. If you could go back to when you were 30 years old, what advice would you give yourself? Think about that for a moment. In the next video, I want to share something very personal. The things people my age often say they wish they understood much earlier in life. Some of these realizations took people 50, sometimes 60 years to discover. You may not need to wait that long. I hope to see you there.